right, good morning everybody. It's almost 10:07 in my watch and I'm going to start. Welcome to Umpukan sa Nayon. I am Laya Bokiren. So to start, for those who are asking, a charrette is an intense planning session towards a goal. And that goal is for the Nayong Pilipino Foundation property in Parañaque to be transformed into an urban park in 2021. And to make it a home for native trees, plants, birds, and other species. This shall be our dream and legacy, but we want our dreams to be science-based. Umpukan sa Nayon is the name of the project for sectoral consultations dedicated for the programming and physical development of the property in Parañaque. So the consultation started only in April 2020. We invited specialists in youth-oriented spaces, heritage interpreters, heritage specialists. We also invited historians, creatives, so it's from across sectors. The invited panelists are usually requested to share their recommendations to the Nayong Pilipino. The activity, Umpukan sa Nayon, is also an opportunity to explore possible collaborations with our invited panelists and their organizations. So the property is at the New Seaside Road and Jokno Boulevards in Parañaque, Metro Manila. This is what you see on your screen right now, the map. The area is actually a 9.5 hectare property. It's very near the Las Piñas Parañaque Critical Habitat and Ecotourism Area, or the La Papachea. So some urgent matters we would like to ask for this iteration of the Umpukan sa Nayon is, why is it important to start an urban park? So there's this sense of urgency on our part. And then aside from that, we want to ask, how should we create an interim park, and what concrete strategies can the Nayong Pilipino explore given limited resources? We advocate for better outcomes for cities by using parks and nature for the benefit of people in the community and biodiversity. Nayong Pilipino being a duty bearer for the protection of the environment and for taking care of natural heritage. So we want the site to be a space that promotes urban biodiversity. So this is what it looks like right now. That is Kingsford Hotel that you see in Okada. The public has been voicing out the need for more green spaces, and this is our initiative to respond to the call. So what we want for 2021 is for an interim urban park to be complemented by transmedia stakeholder engagement. So the set of efforts shall be titled Project Sambayanihan, and it will be a critical component towards attaining our sustainable development goals for sustainable cities and communities. This is also in line with the Generation Restoration Campaign of the United Nations Decade for Ecosystem Restoration from 2021 to 2030, where urban areas are included in the ecosystems to restore to achieve biodiversity targets. So hopefully, this will not only generate biodiversity conservation that's citizen-led, we also want to generate green jobs as we pave the way for a green economic recovery. We want to instill a love for biodiversity in urban parks among current and future generations. Let me share with you an artist's interpretation of a desired urban park, cultural park, and creative hub in Parañaque. We want it to be an inclusive space to promote human well-being for all ages, to promote creativity and biodiversity conservation. There are some concepts that have been submitted to NPF so far. Just a concept design. We haven't started yet the master planning for the property. So these are initial designs that we have from AJ Moldes, proposed in 2019. Another one from Aris Go, also proposed in 2019. And then aside from that, thankfully, landscape architecture students under Professor Zenaida Galingan have also been sharing their ideas with the Nayong Pilipino Foundation. So this was shared in Haraya 2020 as mini thesis submitted to the landscape architecture program of the UP Diliman. So let me share some of these with you. One is by Karina Ansi. This is her concept. based on, inspired by rice terraces, the Payao. It features solar and wind farm, architectural garden, open spaces, and some water features. Water management systems are in place, and the whole lineup of retention ponds, retention lawns, underground water storages, some water features in the area. Fantastic designs from these young people that have been shared to the Haraya 2020 activity, and also the social media sites of NPF, Nayong Pilipino Foundation. This is what we have been posting so far. Also from JSR Navarro, Pista at Pagkilala. No? So this is based on, the idea is to be inspired by festivals linked by bike routes and an amphitheater, ponds with viewing decks, naturalized infiltration ponds, open spaces, etc. No? So a lot of stakeholders have been sharing their ideas with us, not just the landscape architecture students, but even young people, no, ages 6 to 14, children have been sharing their ideas with us through the Munting Nayon campaign. So we are very thankful for the public for helping us come up with ideas for the Nayong Pilipino Park in Parañaque. Recently, we also had an iteration of Umpukan sa Nayon in partnership with the Philippine Parks and Biodiversity. It was a sectoral consultation called Makakalikas ang Nayon towards a citizen-led biodiversity conservation. Now, so just for some context, why we are doing all these things. It was because last October 2019, the national government approved the development of the Nayong Pilipino Cultural Park and Creative Hub at the Entertainment City in Parañaque. So we were supposed to proceed with the master planning this year, but the pandemic happened. The site is property of the Nayong Pilipino, and it is identified with high cultural, historical, heritage, and ecotourism values because of its proximity to the Las Piñas Parañaque's critical habitat and ecotourism area. So the area, the Nayong Pilipino Cultural Park and Creative Hub, is intended not only as a place to learn about our natural and cultural heritage, but also as a venue for promoting sustainable tourism. And then, an enhanced community quarantine was declared in March 2020 due to the rising number of COVID-19 positive cases in the Philippines. So around 2 hectares of that, this is what it looks like right now, just 2 hectares. A quarantine facility is scheduled to be operational by December 2020, but due to the damages of the tents sustained from Typhoon Ulysses, repairs are still ongoing. Only 2 hectares out of 9.5 are being utilized, and the property was designated by the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases as a quarantine facility, and it is currently being manned by the AFP. So we want to ask, is it possible to set up also a healing garden to promote the idea of a restorative and enabling park in that area, aside from an interim park in the rest of the 9.5 hectare property. Just some shots of photos of what it looks like from our last visit around December 1. So we visited this week, just this week, and the AFP who are manning the 2 hectares, at least in the quarantine side area, have started planting like malunggay, alugbati, just for food sustainability during the time that they will be there. When the quarantine facility is operational, provided to the patients will be food, medicine, free Wi-Fi access, and some softscape or programming for the area. Meanwhile, there are 7 hectares, and we'll be happy to utilize even a portion of that for an interim park. We want to identify the best spots where we can start that around the new seaside area and Jokno Boulevards. We want to demonstrate that there are socioeconomic benefits, psychological benefits, benefits for human well-being that we can have from urban parks in cities or near cities. And that's why we are in the process of consultations right now. Okay, no, so some areas of it, grasses are, it's quite, there are grasses growing already. There are quite a number of trees in the area that need to be identified by your experts. Birds near the proposed park have also been spotted by the Wild Bird Club of the Philippines last September 2020. The list does not include temporal variation of birds, what they eat, and all other information that could provide us with data on what to plant in the area. No, so I'll just show you some of the photos of the birds spotted by the Wild Bird Club around September. Okay. This one also, the clamorous reed warblers. No, so very beautiful. It really has this potential to be a biodiversity hub. And this is a list that they came up with. No, so thankfully, we have a bird list that we want to expand depending on the season. No, we want to start activities in the area also as we transform it into an interim park. So this is also in line with the Generation Restoration campaign, where we want to transform the property into a hub for citizen-led biodiversity conservation. So I will stop sharing my slides here, and I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Attorney Lucille Malilong Esperto, for a few words to welcome our audiences and panelists.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. Nayong Pilipino Foundation is really honored to have experts in environment conservation and biodiversity at our charrette today. If not for the pandemic, we would have been doing the master planning for the whole park. But perhaps the pandemic has given us a chance to further refine our plans for Nayon. It's always been our ambition to make a space for conserving biodiversity in an urban area. And we are aware that the work of creating such a park is both challenging and exciting. And we're glad that you're here today, and we'd like to hear your ideas as well as we listen to our experts. The park can be built with the help of our experts and the support of the public. And if we work together and give each other good vibes, we need your support to get this thing done. We might actually finish an interim park by 2021. So thank you for attending, and please support Nayong Pilipino in its endeavor to build urban forests in Metro Manila. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Attorney Kay. And now I would like to welcome and turn over the digital floor to our partner, Philippine Parks and Biodiversity. The discussion will also be moderated by Nella Lumotan, and she will also introduce to us, give us an idea, what is this Generation Restoration campaign? So with that, I turn over the digital floor to Nella. And
thank you, Laya.
Hi, Nella.
Hello, thank you, and magandang umaga sa lahat who's joined us today. We're very, very glad to share the advocacy about not just urban parks, but restoration in the Philippines. NPF, NPH Parks has been talking about this for months, and this is just the start of the movement. So Generation Restoration, as Laya has mentioned, is actually a large campaign by the United Nations because 2021 to 2030 is the decade on ecosystems restoration. And it really aims to halt the degradation of ecosystems and restore ecosystems all over the world. And so ang Generation Restoration Philippines is something that we hope to champion here in the Philippines, partnering with different collaborators, stakeholders from civil society, private institutions, government, and citizens to make this happen. Kasi syempre, we know that restoration in itself is a very monumental task, and we really need to come together instead of work in silos to restore our ecosystems. So urban parks, actually urban cities, are one of the ecosystems considered a main priority area. Why? Because we know that urban areas occupy less than 1% of the Earth's land surface, although it houses more than half of its people. And so we need to ensure that our cities are healthy, diba? Our urban cities are healthy so that our people are healthy. Alam natin yan na it's not just about the ecosystem, but the people around it, and of course, also the wildlife. So Generation Restoration Philippines is really about uniting together as different stakeholders, as different citizens, to restore from forests to mangrove ecosystems to urban cities, such as in urban parks na gagawin nga nila Nayong Pilipino Foundation. And so we're just really, really grateful that government agencies such as Nayong Pilipino Foundation have really stepped up to make this happen, transform that area. And we really do hope to see more coming together and responding to this call. And so again, we are today joined by experts in this field. We always work with experts in this field and consult them kasi of course, talagang kailangan natin to be science-based, and our decisions are based on what will work for the various ecosystems. Beyond tree planting, diba? It has to really be about effective maintenance management and really decision based on science. So thank you to everyone who joined us today, and we hope that you're enriched by this session. So without further ado, alam kong you guys are all excited. We will introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker is Attorney Alan Barcena. He's from the Energy Development Corporation. Actually, he's the vice president and he heads the corporate social responsibility in the BINHI program. BINHI is the Greening Legacy program of EDC that aims to save, promote, and propagate threatened native tree species. They maintain a broad portfolio of CSR programs that cover environment, education, community engagement, and indigenous peoples upliftment. He is also the chairman of the Mount Apo Foundation, Inc. and president of K-Tech Educational Foundation, Inc. So, Attorney Alan, I will give the floor to you. Maybe you can say a few words and do your presentation.
Thank you, Nela. Good morning to everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Very well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting us. I would like to thank Nayong Pilipino for inviting us to this forum. No? And it will be our pleasure to share some of our recommendations and projects for the Nayong Pilipino Urban Park. No? Nayong Pilipino is quite memorable for me as a child because when we go to the airport to send off my mother, who is an OFW, no? We always pass by Nayong Pilipino and see the small volcano before. No? But of course, there's no more structure there right now. No? But this morning, we would like to share with you our BINHI program. As mentioned by Nela, it's our Greening Legacy and Forest Restoration Program that aims to plant 10,000 hectares of within degraded forest lands all over the country. But for this morning, because of time limitation, we would like to focus on our Arboretum program at the BINHI and Energy Development Corporation. I think I have my presentation. Can somebody
All right.
share?
Jessica, can we share his presentation? Thank you.
Okay. So we'll start with, of course, our recommendation is primarily to put up arboretum and tree parks within the Nayong Pilipino area. No? So let's start with the definition of an arboretum. No? Next slide. So an arboretum is actually a collection of living trees. No? Arboretum came from the word arbor, meaning tree. No? This is why we have a celebration called Arbor Day. No? It's the celebration of the trees. No? Next slide. So as mentioned, it's a collection of living trees. No? And what's unique about EDC Arboretum is we propagate and we plant not just trees, not just ordinary trees, but Philippine native and threatened tree species, because part of our advocacy is to really promote and propagate our native tree species, particularly the most threatened ones. And this arboretum is usually planted thematically or according to its family or geographic distribution, for easy identification, and appreciation by the public. So we have several arboretum projects all over the Philippines. Right now, we have 15 arboretum project with our partner local governments, schools, and even customers of our power or electricity. Next slide. Okay, so this slide just shows the location of our different arboretum projects. Next slide. So part of our BINHI program is, so we also recently, this is last year, we also helped the DNR in setting up an arboretum island in order to contribute to the restoration and rehabilitation of the Boracay wetlands. So what are the common features of the BINHI Arboretum? So there are common features of this project. Number one is the site development plan. This is usually a map which will include the list of different trees and species, with the description of the trees through signages, for proper identification, because most of us are not really quite familiar with our native trees. And of course, there's the entrance marker at the front of the project, and there are usually several pathwalks. The pathwalks are designed in a way that sometimes it represents the leaves of the trees, or even some quotation marks. So later on, we will show you some examples of this pathwalk. Next slide. Of course, there are seedlings. So as part of our partnership agreement or arrangement, we provide the seedlings, which are composed of our priority threatened species. In the BINHI program, we have identified 96 of the most threatened tree species that are native in the Philippines. So these are the subject of our propagation and planting in our different projects with the partners. So again, there will be signages that will provide the scientific name and description of the seedlings, its ecological and economic importance, and all other related information. So this will be in the form of signages, but the signages will vary depending on the concept of the area. So it can be a small signage, or it can even be a parang malalaking signages. Of course, it has to complement the total plan of the area. So the BINHI Arboretum projects also serve as living laboratory for our students, and venue for educational field trips. So for example, in the BINHI project that we have in UP Diliman and UP Los Baños, these are often visited by students, so that they can have awareness and appreciation of our native tree species. So these are sample photos of some of the trees that we have planted. This is in the UP Los Baños Arboretum. You can see there the signage in the front part of the project. And these have been the trees that we planted. Medyo malalaki na. Normally, seedlings are maintained and taken care of for 3 to 5 years, so that their growth and survival are assured. So we don't just engage in planting, but more importantly, protection and maintenance is a big part of our tree growing projects. No? So we maintained and protect them for 3 to 5 years so that they can already compete with grasses or weeds, no? And their growth and survival are assured. This is an example of a linear park that we are doing with one of our customers in Cavite. No? It's called the Analog Devices Incorporated. This is a semiconductor plant in Cavite, no? Which is one of our Binhi partners. So sila naman, they're doing a linear park. No? It's not an arboretum, but a linear tree park, no? Wherein they are planting native trees surrounding their plant, no? Or inside the perimeter of their plant. So we are helping them in terms of providing the seedlings and technical assistance, no? in taking care of the seedlings. This is another example of a tree park, or we call it living tree museum. This is naman in partnership with a university in Negros, no, in UNR. And what they did, it's also similar to an arboretum, but they called it a living tree museum. No? So it serves as an educational project for the students, and also for the public. And more schools are very much interested in putting up tree parks and arboretum inside their campuses. No? And these are being taken care of by the students and the teachers themselves. Next slide. So I think that's the end of my presentation. It's just really to give you a snapshot of what we've been doing, no, in terms of putting up arboretum and tree parks. No? Of course, I mentioned already that the unique feature of these projects is the use of native trees and most importantly, the threatened ones. No? I know other speakers are experts on native trees, so I will leave it up to them to discuss and give the importance of planting native trees. So again, thank you for this opportunity to present our recommendation and examples of our projects. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Sir Alan. And the work of EDC has really been inspirational to many. Really, really astounding. So before we segue to the next speaker, so matanong lang po, is this your proposed solution for the Nayong Pilipino Park to have an arboretum? Because of course we understand that kailangan talaga natin na magkakaroon ng housing of the seedlings as well, and an area in the Nayong Filipino property. So yun po ba ang inyong solution?
It's our main recommendation, Nela. No? Hopefully we can help Nayong Pilipino put up arboretum inside the Nayong Filipino area. No? And of course, there will be other opportunities for collaboration. I've already mentioned before that we have technical expertise, so we will be glad to be part of conferences or even technical discussions. No, we also have the publications. No? We publish the Binhi book, wherein it documents our 96 priority species and some of our best practices in forest restoration. So this can be another opportunity for a partnership with Nayong Pilipino. But of course, our main recommendation would be to set up or to establish arboretum inside the area.
Great. That would really be great. And sakto po sa healing garden plan din ng Nayong Pilipino Foundation. Nagnanod si Laya. So I'm sure she agrees. Okay, thank you so much again, Attorney Alan. Okay, so we move on to our next speaker, which is Dr. Ana Del Caban of Wetlands International Philippines. So introduce Dr. Caban is a natural scientist through her training at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and James Cook University, Australia. She was an academic in the Philippines and Malaysia for many years while participating in regional and international conservation efforts. She returned to the Philippines in 2008 and worked on regional projects with Asian Development Bank, Conservation International, United Nations Office for projects of REMIX. And she is currently the program manager of Partners for Resilience Project that promotes integrated management and head of office of Wetlands International Philippines. So without further ado, Dr. Anadel Cabandan.
Thank you. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Na-share na ba? Hindi ba?
Yes, we can see it po.
Okay. I'm very pleased to have been invited to be part of this Umpukan because Wetlands International has a regional program with several of our offices in the region, with China, Indonesia, India, Japan, Malaysia, and the Philippines. We are very pleased because we have one program which is integrating wetlands in urban planning, resilience of cities. Why do we have this? Because when we look at the wetlands around the world, most of the wetland loss is here in Asian Pacific. You can see this blue line here. It's going down. And for instance, 50% of our natural wetlands are converted to agriculture. Our wetlands, by the way, are lakes, rivers, swamps, mangrove forests, seagrass beds, shallow coral reefs. And so we suffer from the loss of wetlands. We suffer from floods because most of the estuaries, most of the tributaries are covered, or the rivers are constricted, and there's a lot of concrete, and so there's less land that can absorb rain. And so we see this flooding, and you have seen this everywhere here in Metro Manila, especially after a monsoon rain or especially after a typhoon. Also in our deltas, the deltas are sinking. These are at the mouths of the rivers. They are sinking because there's too much extraction of water, underground water for domestic use as well as industrial use. So Wetlands International has come up with programs, and one of the programs is accelerating adaptation of building with nature. This is the building of protective areas using natural materials such as mangroves, tree barks, tree trunks, organisms that can hold substrate, and so on. We also have a lot of information materials for answering questions with regards to construction of wetlands. And of course, in general, we want to conserve wetlands for the services that they provide. For instance, rivers, we would like the rivers to have its room for inundation, for breaking out during heavy rains, or having oxbow lakes that can store rain during heavy rainfall, and the restoration of forests so that there's very reduced risk of flooding. So we conducted a regional stakeholder consultation a few months back, and the reason is because we want to inspire, mobilize, and scale up efforts. And there were 5 projects or programs that we want to develop, and these are listed here on this slide. Building with Nature in Asia initiative. This is for landscapes, seascapes, urban areas, which is the most relevant to our discussion this morning. And Resilient Cities, which is to conserve urban wetlands, or having constructed urban wetlands to store water or to filter water before it reaches down to the sea. Also, we want to conserve peatlands or peat swamps, mangrove forests that store carbon and reduce the emission a lot of these peatlands sequester or keep carbon in place. And also we want to reduce the loss of habitats, especially intertidal mudflats or the wetlands along coastal wetlands, which are the stopover feeding areas of migratory birds within the East Asian Flyway. A lot of these are actually in the northern coast of Manila Bay and the wetlands in Mindoro and Mindanao. And also, of course, we want to conserve high altitude wetlands, but these are in the Asian continent and Indian continent. So focusing on resilient cities. As I mentioned, we had this stakeholder consultation and in the Philippines, and the stakeholders identified #1 program or priority to have resilient cities in our regional programming for the next 10 years. What's the purpose of this resilient program? It is to integrate wetlands in urban planning and decision-making for resilience building. And this is the very topic that we are talking about today, having urban planning, having a Nayong Pilipino that is part of the space that's needed for a healthy society. We want to have inspiration, science-based restoration of urban wetlands, and having constructed wetlands for the purpose of storing storm water, which happens in our cities. And we want to mobilize partnerships such as this and having management plans for urban wetlands. And we can have pilot studies and have or pilot programs, and then we can scale up towards the Philippines. And so may I advance my views on the Nayong Pilipino plans. I really support this development that you are planning. This is excellent. And among the designs that concepts that were proposed is Nayong Pilipino design that I like very much. Why do I like it very much? It's obvious because it has wetlands. It's spacious. It has trails, or I'm not so sure. I cannot see the trails in the concept, but that's easy to add. It has wetlands or a wetland. It integrates river in between the north and south zones. Maybe we can even talk about the river, make it an opportunity to learn about how the importance of rivers and what do we need to do with the river banks so that we don't suffer from flooding. It has a water management system having a pond, a retention pond, and a flow towards the river. It can provide habitats for birds, and so pleased to know that there are already birds present there, and some are migratory. It provides an opportunity for learning, for culture, arts. There's a museum for biodiversity, obviously, and for climate change impacts and adaptation. There is solar panels and wind turbines that are put there. And of course, there's also the opportunity to learn how to address the presence or the occurrence of severe extreme events that will cause rainfall, and how we can deal with this in a water management system. I see that it has flexibility. It can be landscape for a village. Right now, the village is for Calderere, for the Igorot village, for museum that can house different moving themes or cultures, and it may be changed annually. So I see that the first features are fundamental, space, wetland, integration of the river, the management system, water management system, and trees that can provide, or vegetation that can provide habitats for birds. And the last two components can be adaptable or can be changed every now and then to highlight the different culture that we find here in the Philippines from north to south. So with that, I would like to thank Nayong Pilipino. Wetlands International's role is to safeguard and restore wetlands for people and nature, including constructed wetlands. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Ms. Annadel. I'm sure actually type the message to Laya after this that definitely we should really collaborate with Wetlands International for this project, right? Wetlands, I believe you would agree, ma'am, that we should mainstream it even more here in the Philippines. It's important, right, in being a habitat for plants and animals, for improving flood control, absorbing pollutants, acting as carbon sinks and sequestering and storing carbon, and it really has a great role to play. So we're looking forward to the work of Wetlands International in integrating also your proposed solutions and hearing more from you. So salamat po, Ms. Annadel. So we move on to our next speaker, Georgian Primavera. So Dr. Georgian Primavera was recognized for her significant and pioneering research contributions to the aquaculture of marine shrimp, science-based utilization and conservation of mangroves, and to studies in the critically important beach forest ecosystem. Her research established conditions for induced maturation and broodstock development of sugpo and other shrimp, apologies if I cannot pronounce it well, pennade shrimp, correct me na lang po later, that have led to increased farm shrimp production. Dr. Primavera is also an internationally recognized expert on mangroves, have attended personally many of her talks, very inspired, and the work that she's done is also very great here in the Philippines. So Dr. Georgian Primavera.
Good morning to everyone. First of all, thank you to the organizers for the invitation to the Philippine native trees enthusiasts. Okay. So I start off with this map of the Philippines showing Manila Bay. Science tayo kasi I'm a scientist. Here's an old map, Bahia de Manila. Those red things are swamps. And a paper by Dr. Rolyon of UP Diliman showed that a long time ago, before 1890, there were more than 70,000 hectares of mangroves. Ito yun yung mangroves dyan, no? A long time ago in Manila Bay. A more recent image, here's La Papachea, kasi ito yung ating landmark because Nayong Pilipino is somewhere here. And there's Nayong Pilipino there. That's the sea, that's Manila Bay. Okay, so let's be guided by science kung paano yung park gagawin, no? My title is Celebrating Natural and Cultural Diversity Through Beach Forests. Kasi ang location ng Nayong Pilipino nasa beach forest, naturally, no? So the outline, yung objective, background on beach forest, and I emphasize the historical and legacy trees kasi yung heritage and yung diversity nandyan, and then different kinds of beach forest trees by form, size, location, especially yung ornamentals kasi it will be a park, and then their propagation. First, anong beach forest? We know mangroves are between high tide and low tide, so anything above the high tide, yun ang beach forest. And we have different forest types. So nandito si beach forest, no? This would be Nayong Pilipino right now kasi it goes a couple of 100 meters above sea level. This is how the beech forest looks in nature, either by itself or with the mangroves, pristine. Kaya lang, most of the Philippines, we have a nipahat forest and a coconut forest. And in Manila Bay, we have a concrete jungle, no? So our hope is that the Nayong Pilipino Park will have more trees than buildings and concrete. Kasi sobra na. So ano itong beech forest species? We have a book that shows mga 156 species yan sila of tree, mga half 80 are trees. And if you look at different places in the Philippines, many are named after beech forests. So itong black, those are the place names. And in red, those are the scientific and local names. For example, Banilad is Sterculia ceramica, barangay in Cebu and Dumaguete, hindi nila alam, yun pala. Banago is the Specia pupulnea, another one in Bacolod, hindi rin nila alam. And Coron in Palawan. Supposedly, Palawan Coron was named after Cordia subcordata, pero we'll go back to that later on kasi these other species could also be the source. And of course, talisay is the most beloved of all trees in the Philippines. So there are dozens of, tingnan mo ang daming talisay dyan all over. So, eto, banago. Wala nang banago tree, sa fispan na lang ito. But talisay is still here than everywhere. No? As I said, it's beloved. And not so familiar beech species like tambalisa. Ito in Concepcion, Iloilo. But this is the plant that is tambalisa. And of course, not a beech forest, but a mangrove. Manila is named after Scyphiphora hydrophyllacea. Isa yun. Kaya siya nilad kasi most of the mangroves were this kind. And the associate bangkal, Nuclea orientalis. Kabangkalan in Negros has this tree in its logo kasi it used to have a lot of bangkal. Ito yung flower, parang sputnik, ito yung fruit. And in fact, there is even, ito na yung culture, no? A pastry named binangkal because it looks like the fruit of the bangkal. But the more important thing about this species is that it is resistant to waterlogging. Here are photos after Ulysses. Tingnan nyo yung bangkal. They stood firm, no? So you have a river bank there. Ito, this is one species. Wag na yung bamboo, no? I see on social media plant bamboo. No, 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 not along river banks. So ito yung layout, their river banks, their buildings, pathways, and so on. And I like this kasi maraming trees. Sabi ko sana mas maraming trees kaysa buildings. Along pathways, you can have bushes, beech forest bushes. Sorry, puro scientific names kasi scientist ako. But anyway, you can ask me for the common names. And these are all beech resorts, by the way, making use of native species, yung pandanus, no? Nayong Pilipino will be like a beach resort kasi nasa tabi lang ng Manila Bay. Now we come to the legacy trees, historical trees, starting with Molave, Vitex parviflora. This is the biggest I have seen kasi look at the trunk. No? That's the trunk of this Molave tree. But I like this tree for those of us who remember the poem of Zulueta da Costa. Not yet Rizal, not yet sleep not in peace. There are 1,000 waters to be spanned, 1,000 mountains to be crossed, 1,000 crosses to be borne. We carve for all time your dream until our people seeing are become like the Molave firm, resilient stones. So ito yung cultural legacy, no, that we would like the park also to ano. And in Panay Capiz, this haligi of the church go back to 1700 made of Molave. And going back to our history, ito, rice, lusong, plow, araro, water pump, corn grinder, posts, all made of Molave. Kasi ang tigas niya, this is the planggana, and religious artifact and chairs. So that's our historical legacy. Another tree is the dangkalan in Tagalog or bitaog in the south. Here's the scientific name. That's the tree in Palawan. And if you look at the history of the Katipunan in Aklan, it says that the Aklanong Katipuneros were initiated outside the house of Mr. Dalida near a big dangkalan tree. That is this tree, and you can imagine, this is another big dangkalan in Agusan del Norte, my home province, named the Centennial Tree, and with a plaque here and a commemorative stamp, 600 years old daw. So, binibisita ng tourists, but it fell in 2017. Walang typhoon, walang winds. Yun pala, may fungal rot. No? Here, yan. That's why it broke. Yun ang problema natin. We are very good at the start. We declare this and declare that. Walang follow through. Tapos iniwanan, yun pala yung ficus, yung struggling fig, nag-ano na siya. So, hopefully we will not be like that. No? Yung follow through is the more important. We also look at tall trees. Magtalisay is this one, Terminalia. Taluto is Pterosymbium, all beech forest, no? And this is Bagalna, Melia acederac. I have squared the people just for size reference. You can see the relative height. And Dita, I think many of you know Dita. I thought the tallest Dita was in Bantayan in 2004. Andyan ako. Then in 2018, I saw this taller Dita in Catanduanes, here. The nice thing about this UST for landscaping, you should have this Nayong Pilipino. This is in UP Infotech. And also ito, in 2011, it saved 36 people from Typhoon Ondoy. Kaya may commemorative plaque naman siya. They clung to the trees. I don't know how, no? 36 of them, pero that was, they confirmed it. So we come now to big trees. This is the famous Bitoon tree, Barringtonia asiatica in Lasal, 2015. But 7 years ago, I went there. I standardized the size. Now these windows here, you can see. So you think a big tree would not grow, but this has grown. You can compare, no? This is definitely bigger than this. And the bituon has medicinal fruits used for mga cancer cysts or something. Yeah. Many beech forest trees have medicinal properties. Like this one, the Nino or the Noni. Kasi in the old Filipinos, walang butika, no? Their butika was the beech forest. They went there. So nandyan yung ating cultural legacy and our natural legacy. And we do have books like this, no? That we can read for that. Another big tree is this one, Koron-koron. And according to this book, the Tagalogs call this tree kolong-kolong kasi yung fruit niya, yung seed nakakulong, nakapreso. Kulong-kulong daw ito. When the Spanish came, hindi siyempre ma-pronounce, so naging koron-koron. And I think this is the source of the name of the korons in Palawan, is this tree. And of course, kalumpang or bubog, very beautiful tree in downtown Iloilo. For 1 week, however, it has scarlet blooms, kaya lang mabaho siya. That's why it's called fetida, no? Sarculia. But never mind, you just, clip your nose for 1 week and the rest of the year you enjoy, you admire the beauty of the tree. So now we come to the second part here. Medium to small trees. This is part of the propagation, 2009 yung seedling ko because I propagate. And this year, ito na siya. It's a small tree, maganda siyang itanim. Putian is the name. Other medium trees, all beech forest trees that I have also planted. And now we come to ornamental trees with attractive leaves. No, this is in Siargao, Sugbalagun, Xylocarpus rumfi. Hindi ito siya patay. This is this tree in Palawan. Beautiful tree. When the greens disappear, yung chlorophyll, lalabas yung red pigments. Okay. Another tree, the Balitbitan, beech forest. Again, for the attractive foliage here. Before the greens appear this time, wala pa yung chlorophylls, white muna siya, no? And then it turns green. And eto na siya sa MOA, Mall of Asia. It's being planted. So you should have this in Nayong Pilipino. And still another one is the Malabrigo. Ito siya sa beach forest, no? It's a bush, very untidy, but it has been cultivated. The leaves, here you can see the variegated leaves. And the bark, by the way, is also used to make rope. And the hula-hula skirt, ito siya is not made of grass. It's made of bark of this Hibiscus tiliaceus. But the best part of this really, another use, but this is in nature, no? Sa beach, ganito siya. But now it lines our highways. So you can have sources of saplings of this if you want to plant this. But ito talaga, this is our legacy. You go to the rural areas, these are our Filipino children enjoying, no, the shade of that tree. So we can have the same in Nayong Pilipino. Now we come to trees with beautiful flowers naman, hindi na leaves. Of course, dap-dap. Ito. But, so I planted ito, plant ko ito. Kaya lang, a few years later, ayan na yung goal. I had to kill 2 of my trees, cut them and burn them. Challenge, this is a challenge to science, to foresters and to botanists. No? Man can go to the moon and we cannot solve this insect goal of dap-dap. Kaya we are not planting dap-dap in our public places. Ang ganda-ganda kaya niya. And mention was made of all the birds. All these trees are beech forest trees, by the way. I won't mention them, but you can see all the birds and the variety. Of course, in the beach, you also have marine turtles, ganon. Some more ornamental trees, Keratoxylum formosum. Here are the flowers. In Singapore, they call it Singapore Sakura, and they sell it. They grow it commercially and sell it. In the Philippines, what do? We cut it. It's called puringon or salinggogon also. But ito yung sister species niya, Keratoxylum sumatranum. It's called uringon, like formosum, kasi pinuputol, inuuling. Although another name is Cancilay, after which Silay City was named. No, ito yung ating legacy naman. No, it's a legacy tree. This Cancilay. The flowers. And this one, of course, this is a beech forest species. You should have this beautiful, beautiful magpuno, Santos Temon. Lovely blooms and lovely leaves. This is now available commercially, so you can get this. And vines, these are mangrove associates. Ito, so beautiful, no? But it's very surprising. It's not being sold in the Philippines. I see this in homes, in resorts, but not commercially available. So this should be in Nayong Pilipino. Can you also get somehow something like this? Kasi maganda siya. And then the last part here, I have my own nursery. Kasi you will have to get sources. If you decide to go for some of these species, you will need nursery. So I have my own nursery, and I outplanted another species that maybe you should have, Cerbera. Ayan siya, February 2020. Very beautiful fruits, but very deadly, meaning you can die. I won't go into why. It will take too much time. Maybe you have second thoughts of planting this, no? Kasi may mga bata. So anyway, another one is Cordia subcordata. Ito siya. And the nice thing is it produces fruits all year round. And that's what it is now. These are all my plants, by the way. So last few slides, in 2008, after I retired, we bought a 33-hectare barren rice field. Naku, talagang ano. And now, ganito na. We planted 80 species of native trees, mostly beech forest, no? Of course, the total plants, siguro by the hundreds na, maraming namatay, syempre, no? Kasi barren siya. The vacant parts are for, structures that we plant. But the thing about native trees, about beech forest, is they have high germination and high survival and fast growth rate. So that would be good for your, and the last part would be, from there, we exchange seeds, no, from those trees. I collect the seeds and we exchange them with our group. We have seed exchanges and also seedling exchanges. So there are available na some of these trees, and the number one species I would recommend that you really should have is bani or baluk-baluk. Napakabilis. In 3 years, nanganak na ito siya, no? In 3 years. And I have been giving out seeds every year na for the last 5 years. ang only request ko is those who get seeds from me, padalhan nila ako ng baby pictures pag nag-sprout. So I have a family album of all the species that I have sent seeds from my mother trees too, no? So last 2 slides, ito yung Philippine native trees. We are 14,000 strong. I know Sel is listening since 2013. And we are producing na these native species, no? And we have seedlings. So Nayong Pilipino, you know where to go. At nanganak itong PNTE ng other PNTEs in Panay. You have Lunhao, in Davao, in Visayas, in Mindanao. And we have all kinds of activities, including lectures, ito, Zoominars, webinars. And the Panay group, this is second to the last. I'd like to focus kasi highlight. Last November 30 lang ito, meaning forest walk in Lulagaw sa Lasang. Forest walk of children. Note, these are children. Yes, they are children to learn. We start early, no? Kasi when they are children, hindi pa sila, they are not yet, yung minds are not yet made up. They are open. You say this is beautiful, they will believe you. But of course, the parents, kasama yung parents, and actually it was also a learning activity for parents. And beach forest, they went to a beach forest place, so kaya malapit yung beach, so they had there. And here, you can imagine the wonder and the awe of these children, no? Looking at the beach and planting. This is bunny with their mother or their father. So yung educational function of the park is also important. And with that, I end with this slide of a mangrove park in Aklan where we have school children visiting. Thank you.
Wow. Maraming salamat po, Dr. Georgen. We always learn a lot from you. That's a very, very comprehensive presentation. And kakatuwa po to see your collections. Very inspirational. I'm sure Nayong Pilipino Foundation is inspired. I will take you up on sabi niyo po yung seeds. Baka humingi po ako. But thank you so much. Looking forward to having Nayon implement your recommendations for their property, which I'm sure everyone is excited seeing your presentation. Okay, so last but not the least, we would like to call on si Prof. Pastor Pat Malabrigo Jr. He is an associate professor of the Department of Forest Biological Sciences, College of Forestry and Natural Resources, and curator for trees in the Museum of Natural History, UP Los Baños. He is also a member of the Global Tree Specialists Group and the Species Survival Commission of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, as well as the chief scientist of the Global Tree Assessment of Philippines Endemic Trees. So, Prof. Pat, the floor is yours po.
Yes, thanks, Nella. Can you see my slide now?
Yes po, perfect.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone, and thank you, Nayong Pilipino, for inviting me to be part of this Umpukan sa Nayon. So I got this proposed design from the brochure shared to me by the Nayong Pilipino. So I'm not a landscaper, nor engineer, nor architect, but upon browsing the design layout of the proposed Nayong Pilipino Cultural Park and Creative Hub, I became very excited and interested on the potential recreation value it can offer. So as a botanist, I believe what I can contribute for the betterment of the park is the choice of native plant species, not only for the beautification, but for other ecological benefits of the park. In the first place, as Dr. Georgen Primavera emphasized, native plants are a vital part of our Filipino culture. Okay, very much parallel and relevant to our effort is the New Urban Agenda of 2017. As some of you may know, during the Global Summit of United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, which took place in Quito, Ecuador, sometime in October 2016. World leaders adopted the New Urban Agenda, which set global standards of achievement in sustainable urban development. It basically encourages all parties to rethink the way we build, manage, and live in the cities. So one of the major strategies in order to attain the urban development agenda is the adoption of the City Biodiversity Index, also known as Singapore Index, as its development is spearheaded by the National Parks Board of Singapore. CBI is a pioneering self-assessment tool designed to help cities better understand how they can improve their biodiversity conservation efforts over time. In the Philippines, we may look into the DNR BMB Technical Bulletin 2018-02 regarding the procedures in the conduct of assessment of urban biodiversity. A user's manual on the assessment is also available online and could be one of the topics for the capacity building for the NPF staff. I was part of the group that crafted these procedural guidelines for the CBI in the Philippines. Unfortunately, until now, not a single city is adopting this technical bulletin yet. So to explain briefly, CBI is comprised of 23 indicators that measure native biodiversity, ecosystem services provided by biodiversity, and governance and management of biodiversity. The index basically means that the more native biodiversity in a city, the more ecosystem services it can provide. And if biodiversity management is incorporated on the management plan, of course, including budget allocation by the city government, then the highest CBI could be attained. It puts a lot of importance on nurturing our native biodiversity. So by using this CBI as our guide, then we can prevent the unintended possibility of contributing to the bioinvasion problems. It should be noted that the biggest culprits in this serious bioinvasion problem we are facing now are the landscapers or the horticulturists. They became interested and in love with the foreign plants that they do not know well. So just to give you some example of this well-known bioinvasive species, this is water hyacinth. I'm sure you too will also be attracted with the beauty of this plant. But look how it invades many of our water bodies. In Pasig River, the ferry operations are always suspended every time there is water hyacinth bloom. And for your information, this species already invaded our upstream rivers, even in higher elevations. Another example is Lantana camara. The flowers look like a bouquet of small crowns, hence the name coronitas, small crowns. There could have been no problem if we can contain their growth in areas where we want them to have. But this species already dominated many of our natural forests. They even appear as vine or lianas on tree canopies. Some of you might have used this species or perhaps its relatives to make trellis because it's a beautiful hanging plant. That is why it is called sky flower. But this species is a killer. In Mount Makiling, it's one of our biggest problems. The plant has the ability to cover the whole tree canopy, preventing the tree to perform photosynthesis to eventually cause its death. This one is a tree species. Again, it's African tulip. It's a native of South Africa, which became one of the favorite road trees in many countries, including the Philippines. The large orange bell-shaped flowers are very attractive. Unfortunately, this species is listed as the 88th most invasive species in the world. And we already observed this species invading many of our mountain forests from Batanes to Mindanao. We even documented this species toughly competing with the known pioneer species, Talahib and Binunga, in a forest gap in Cagayan. And look at this African tulip seedling. It flowers and fruits at a very young age. And that is very worrying, as we should expect that it will become more dominant in the years to come. This is Palo Santo, another famous exotic tree species for landscaping because of its very showy, colorful flowers, which produce winged fruits like dipterocarps. We witnessed how this species invaded and over-dominated the lower slopes of Mount Makiling. In almost every experimental plants of our students, Palo Santo is the most abundant and most dominant species. So if we choose to follow the CBI guidelines and avoid the use of exotic species, So the basic question is, what do we plant? So similarly, the answer is basic. We have a lot to choose from. As a mega diverse country, we have more than 10,000 species of plants, and majority have high ornamental potential. Let me show you some of them, in addition to what have been presented already by Ma'am Georgine. For the herbaceous, we have our unique Philippine orchids, and take note that we have more than 1,300 species of this, and more than 80% are endemic. Then the Philippine begonias, we have about 140 species of these Philippine begonias. The amazing pitcher plants, we have about 60 species of Nepenthes. And then we have these shooting stars, or the Hoya. We have more than 200 species of Hoya, which are either shrub, herb, or vine. Then the gorgeous Medinillas, or Kappa. We have about 19 native species of Medinilla. And then for the trellis plants, aside from the one presented by Doc Georgine, Crystalletea australiaceae, we also have several good trellis plants. So instead of the bioinvasive Thunbergias or skyflower, we have this Nyugnyugan or Cumbretum indicum. Then of course, the highly sought jade vines, or this Strongylodon species. This is from EDC UPLB Biodiversity Park. Can you notice the pendulous flowers? Here's the close-up. So for the shrubs or mini tree, we have Bagawak Morado or fireworks. I would like to propose this as the UP tree because of the very fitting leaf color. Green on the surface, maroon underneath. And the flowers look like fireworks, which could symbolize triumph and celebration, or perhaps graduation. We even have Balay Lamok, which many consider to be our native Sakura. The Hungo and other Elaeocarpus species are also comparable with the Sakura blossom. For large trees, particularly for open spaces and thus road trees, we have Banaba. Yes, it has very beautiful flowers, especially when grown in the open. And of course, every part of the tree is known to be diuretic, to lower uric acid and cure kidney diseases. We have Amugis, which I consider as a good alternative to rain tree because it has a wide spreading canopy. The advantage of Amugis is that the flowers are more attractive and the fruits are edible. They taste like siniguelas. Anyway, they are casins. This tree is a native Bauhinia. We call it Alibangbang. People keep on planting Fringon and Hong Kong tree, which are exotic Bauhinia, not knowing that we have the native equivalent, which is more beautiful and more importantly, with edible leaves. Leaves of Alibangbang eaten raw and taste like apple mango. But more often, leaves are used as flavoring agent for sinigang, especially by the people of the north. Then, of course, it's unknown to many that our national tree, the Nara, is a good landscape tree with flaming yellow flowers when in bloom. Unfortunately, most people value Nara only for wood. Then instead of the exotic fire tree, which is very prone to caterpillar infestation, we should plant this beautiful native tree. This is Xiar. Not only the golden yellow flowers are wonderful, but also the colorful fruits. This tree is also known as copperpot. And you might be more surprised that the hardest woods in the planet also have superior ornamental value. These are flowers of our ironwood trees. We have 5 endemic species of ironwood, though only known for one local name, which is Mangkono or Magkono. So Mapilig has white flowers, Sierra Madre Mangkono, Palawan Mangkono, and Mangkono have red flowers. And the hardest and the most stunning of all is the ironwood that bears the name of our country, Santostimon philippinensis. Its yellow flowers have numerous stamens that look like early morning sun rays, hence the local name Bago Adlaw or Bagong Araw. Interestingly, these ironwood trees are precocious species, meaning they produce flowers and fruits at very young age, as early as 1 year old, based on our bee experience. And to save the best for last, I'm sure everybody will be in love with a street planted on both sides with this tree. This is buggrass, more commonly known as rainbow tree, because the bark exhibits a variety of color through its progressive peeling. This tree is so unique because of the more than 700 eucalyptus species in the world, this is the only one that escaped or passed above the equator. So this is the only eucalyptus native to the Philippines, yet the most beautiful. So those were just a small fraction of the enormous plants, in addition with what have been presented by Dr. Georgian Primavera. So their potentials are huge and waiting to be utilized, and therefore should be popularized and mainstream for planting. However, the biggest problem is that people who do urban landscape planning and planting, the landscapers and the horticulturists, are not aware of this diversity. This is where collaboration between experts becomes so important. We have an ongoing project with the New Clark City, Interlac. Myself and a number of urban landscapers and urban planners were tasked to review the NCC urban design guidelines, particularly the landscape design guidelines. The urban landscapers reviewed the specifications or characteristic of plants for its landscape purpose, street trees, open parks, hedges, epiphytes, trellis. Then I suggested a number of alternative native species with the desired specification or characteristics. And I would like to make it known that every popular and commonly known exotic species in landscaping has the native equivalent. We only need to be aware of our diverse plant resources. And to contribute on raising people's awareness on our potential ornamental native trees or native plants, our group is in the process of developing a book on Philippine ornamental plants, which will serve as a guide for landscapers and horticulturists. The book will feature the commonly used exotic plants side by side with its native alternatives. Actually, this is already 1 year in the making. It takes some time because it involves a number of botanists working on different platforms, but hopefully we can launch it next year. So for my last slide, to answer the poster's question, are parks relevant during this pandemic? So I would like to share these insights I got from a web article. It says that plants don't just look good, they can make us feel good too. Studies have shown that plants boost our mood, productivity, concentration, and creativity, reduce stress, fatigue, sore throats and colds, help clean indoor air by absorbing toxics, increasing humidity and producing oxygen, add light to sterile space, and are therapeutic to care for. It's true that when we say plants make people happy. So all of these plants benefits are extremely needed in these times of pandemic. With that, thank you so much again for inviting me to talk on this forum. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Prof. Pat. Very, very inspiring as always. Actually, we were monitoring the chat box and talagang I'm sure ang dami nang gustong mag-plant ng native trees, no? And of course, the important task to keep mainstreaming these trees is amongst all of us. So thank you again for sharing your knowledge. And for the next part, thank you again to all the speakers. For the next part, we are opening up to Q&A. Meron tayong mga pre-seeded questions. For the audience, you could also type additional questions. We will see what we can entertain. But ito yung dalawang questions from Nayong Pilipino Foundation before we move on to the participant question. So first, it's a very, very simple question, and I'm sure you guys have a lot to say about this in terms of health and wellness. And the first question that Nayong Pilipino wants to ask is, are parks relevant given the pandemic? So, who wants to start? Baka si Dr. Alan dahil siya ang una kanina. And feel free, participants, to type your suggestions, your insights.
I think, Nela, it's becoming all the more relevant and important to have the tree parks or even mga outdoor activities because of COVID pandemic. As you know, a lot of us here have been in quarantine lockdown for so many months now, no? And we are already feeling the quarantine fatigue, as they say. No? So it's good to have tree parks in the country, particularly in Metro Manila, where we can go and enjoy and breathe some fresh air. See, Professor Pat has already mentioned about the benefits of spending time with nature and with trees. No? So it's been proven, no, scientifically that spending time with nature, particularly with the trees, can help us not only boost our immune system but also our emotional well-being.
Thank
So
you po.
it's relevant. It's very relevant.
Oo nga po. Just having a walk in trees, di ba talaga nakaka-inspire? So, that would really be beneficial. How about si Dr. Annadel? What do you think?
Yeah, ang mga parks ay importante kahit na walang pandemic. In
Yes.
fact, I was attending one session organized by DNR and PALA, the Philippine Association of Landscape Architects. And I learned that there's a standard. We need 5 square meters of open space for each person. And how many people are there here in Metro Manila? Park, the Nayong Pilipino is insufficient. So let's keep the Nayong Pilipino as a park for pandemic and non-pandemic situations. Thank you.
Yes, correct. The importance of parks is not just during the pandemic or even after, but it's really, talagang something that persists and prevails. And nature is needed by everyone. We know that. How about the Dr. Georgen?
I think you don't have to ask me, no? Kasi what did I do when I retired? I spent my money instead of going around the world. I bought 3 hectares of barren rice field and made a tree park.
Wow.
So yeah, that's the one that has 80 species now, no? But anyway, maybe I can ask you. You said interim park. I'm worried. Meaning to say, anong mangyari if you start planting? Kasi ako talaga, before you plant, you secure the tenure of para protected yung tree mo. When you say interim park, parang I have imagine na kung the higher ups decide iba na ang gamit nitong Nayong Pilipino kasi it's very very expensive real estate, no, very expensive. Baka puputulin na lahat ng mga trees. So I think ang seminar nyo is how to secure the tenure of your location na it will be protected from even any president of the Philippines once you plant your trees there kasi legacy yun eh. So yun ang question ko sa inyo. Just for my own
Yes.
peace of mind.
Laya, maybe you could say more about that. Tenure, of course. We know that that's very important. The tenurial instrument, di ba po? That's why nga even EDC would always plant also in mga schools. So Laya, I turn over the floor to you from Nayong Pilipino.
Si Attorney K.
Attorney K, the Executive Director.
Yeah, the property is titled property in Nayong Pilipino's name, and it was really intended for a park. It's been that way for years. It just never got built. For this year, it should have been a PPP hybrid, where government will originally had 2 billion to build the park, and then a private partner to build on 30% of the area to entice them to invest. So master planning would have started this year, and wildlife conservation as a design principle was really part of it. But because it's being used as a quarantine facility now, we're calling it an interim park, only to the extent that we can't use the full 9.5 hectares yet. Because we also don't have the 2 billion anymore because that was used for COVID response. So what can we build that follows the same design principle of wildlife conservation in the meantime. While we can't do full hybrid PPP, we thought that it would be best to start planting now so that when businesses are more stable and we can attract the right kind of investor, then we can do the full 9.5 hectares. However, we've seen how much things have changed and maybe we've realized the value of parks. So I guess part of Nayong Pilipino's advocacy will be to use up all the 9.5 in the future as pure park. And funding that, the idea was it's PPP to make sure that the park gets maintained. Since we know that government funds are not always enough to take care of everything. That's the reason for that. However, if we find a new way of funding it through CSR or crowdfunding or another way for Nayong Pilipino to make money, then why not? We're really open to making that whole place an urban forest. The other thing is in relation to the question of Doc Jurgen, we agree with you. How do we make sure that it stays as a park forever? And this is just off the top of my head. Then we need to make the declaration the same way other protected areas were declared through our Republic Act. Then it's a law, then it would take no less than Congress to change it. So we will also definitely explore that so that it doesn't get converted to something else and that all the work we put in and all our dreams don't get derailed. So that's where we will need your support, maybe write your congressman, write your senators, make sure that this stays as a park forever.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Attorney K. Dr. Jurgen, does that answer po your question?
Just a small follow-up question lang kay Director, no? Realistically, anong timeline nyo for digging a hole and planting the first seedlings? I ask this, no, because I have a nursery. In addition to my tree park, I have a nursery. And sa nursery ko, mostly beech forest. Some of them are 1 to 2 meters. Overstaying na talaga. And I'd like to, I prioritize these for public spaces, not private. Kasi kung public, maraming makakaano. But kung 2 years pa kami magtatanim, baka I cannot wait. But if within 6 months, siguro I can to donate to your Nayong Pilipino. So what is the range of your timeline na you will put the first plant in the ground?
The instructions are as up. We're just getting help from DENR to figure out what we need to make sure that the trees actually grow. Since this is reclaimed area, I think we're already in initial talks with DENR to figure out where to plant, which they said that they'll be doing soil testing. And then we're also looking at the previous designs and then see what's most appropriate so that we can continue the work without going near the quarantine facility. However, we really want to designate the quarantine facility area already as a healing garden. We want everybody to remember that a pandemic occurred and this is what happened, and make sure we never forget don't get pandemics anymore, so that we want to set aside that area as a reminder to take care of nature better so we don't get pandemics like this anymore. So that's really the idea. So if we can plant right away, we would really love that. And we hope that, 5 years from now, we can see some trees growing. And as you pointed out, some of those trees in 3 years might already be giving off seeds that we can share. So that's really the dream.
Okay.
Okay. So I think Laya wants to add something, di ba? Laya, may
Yes.
gusto kang idagdag?
In relation to the question of Dr. Jurgen and the question here on the chat box, last December 1 po, we visited the site last December 1. I was with Dr. Dinley Pintor of the DNR ERDB, and it was just an ocular. The DNR ERDB needs to identify several sampling sites sampling points there. Yung profile po kasi ng soil, no, so in the quarantine area, puro gravel. And then a few meters distance away from the quarantine area, the soil consists of parang sandy siya na may shell, no? And then there's an area across Okada and across Kingsford Hotel. So this is New Seaside, no? And then Jok, no? Ito po yung magaganda talaga yung location. And then near the water also. Meron po kasing doon, body of water, no? Na siya, tinutubuan na ng grasses, tsaka madami ng puno. So hindi po namin na puntahan yung area na yun kasi masukal na siya. At according to the AFP manning the site, may mga ahas na. No, so the DNR ERDB will select sampling points para makagawa po ng soil analysis. And then hopefully, no, and we really want to target this by tree planting season magsimula. No, this year, in this coming year in 2021. No, so there are possible points, no, while we want to come up with what we call an interim park because of limited resources, because we don't have the 2 billion. And we want for example, a ranger station, no, so that we can generate also green jobs, and there'd be manpower support also looking after the park. No, at hindi lang siya nakatiwangwang doon, because a lot of tree planting activities I notice are about optics sometimes, more often than not, no. And I don't mean to offend anyone, no, but it's tree planting, and then hindi siya science-based, no, and then after you plant the trees, what happens? No one takes care of the area, no. So we want rangers to be there. We want park rangers, urban park rangers to be there in some sort of a ranger station. And then there's also that area there where the quarantine is. It's around 2 hectares. No? So we want, for example, low impact activities, no, for the asymptomatic COVID-19 patients, so that they can create some sort of a garden there as an alternative to what the AFP is planning to offer, for example, Zumba and what they call stress debriefing sessions. No, so maybe we can add to the range of programs that we want to offer the COVID-19 patients. No, so we are planning, for example, activities where they can have plants and have a memory capsule, things like that, no, in the healing garden area. No, so there are possible points where we could start.
Thank you, Laya. Looking forward to that. Actually, yung mini-mention ni Laya for next year is the Sambayanihan 2021. And the goal talaga is to gather all sectors together to make this dream possible. And we believe that it's really through the collaboration that we could also protect it. Madami nang nag-chat ngayon na gusto nila mag-campaign, right? Given what Kay said. And Dr. Jurgen, we actually saw that you were able to campaign against cutting of this toog tree, the 300-year-old toog tree. Tama po, di ba? Na-stop niyo po yun from being cut. And because that was, you made awareness and talagang sinuport ng sambayanan. And that's also what we want to happen for sambayanihan, for these initiatives. Tama po, di ba? Yung toog tree po.
Nelia, just very quickly, kasi nandiyan si Stel. Yes, it was multi-sectoral, no? May staff, may Filipino foresters, pati ang PNTE, and we stopped the cutting. But I just want to make sing it. Sa beach forestries, kasi sabi nyo gravel. It doesn't sound very fertile. Yung tree farm ko was barren rice land, which has a hard pan. If you ask an agriculturist, yung hard pan, yun ang the worst for planting. Mamamatay siya, no? But yung species ko, through 2 El Niños, 2010 and 2016, yung beach forest, 80% of the species survived the El Niños. Yung non-beach forest, pati yung dipterocarps, walang 20% ang survive. 80+% namatay. So if you have gravel there, no, you will be in very good shape using beach forest species. Kasi sila very hardy, they reproduce early, they have high growth rates, gano'n. So, ayan.
Great.
Wow, thank
Salamat
you.
po. Salamat
Actually,
po.
yung DNR ERDB po, sina Dr. Linley Pintor and her staff, they are estimating around 15 sampling points base dun sa laki ng area. At kada spot po na lakaran namin ay may iba-ibang soil type silang nakikita. Oo.
Okay. Sige, maraming
Dami po
salamat.
yun. 15.
To
Okay.
clarify, reclaim land yan? Hindi.
Yes po.
Reclaim? So, kung
Yes.
ganon,
Dati po daw merong puno doon. According to, it was my clue in yung nakaraan na makakalikasang Nayong Umpukan. According to my clue, dati daw po yung nakita niya doon ay mga pakawan and then parang nilibing.
yeah. So, dapat yung mga itatanim doon ay
Opo eh.
tumpak
Kasi
doon.
since hindi sila pwedeng putulin, nilibing.
Yeah.
Oo. So we don't want that to happen, of course.
Okay, great. Thank you to everyone for this insightful discussion. How about si Sir Pat? Baka may gusto po kayong dagdag yung sa relevance ng parks or okay na po ba? May gusto po ba kayong idagdag?
Okay,
First,
Lela.
dun sa CBI, yung wala pang nag-adopt na sinabi niyo po.
So, anyway, this plant benefit studies that I presented, take note na ito ay ginawa, wala pa yung pandemic. So, it shows that napakahalaga nung plants, nung nature, no? Para ma-improve yung emotional status of the people. No? More especially ngayong pandemics. Kaya alam nyo naman, panay, sobrang dumami yung plantitos and plantitas ngayon. No? Because it shows na talagang sa pandemic fatigue natin, malaki yung naitutulong ng halaman. No? But I would like to add on what Doc Georgine has commented about the beach species. Actually, ito talaga yung pinaka matitibay na species. It has the harshest conditions, maybe next to mangrove, no? Na nakakaya niyang i-survive yon. Buhangin, mainit. So talagang lahat ng harsh conditions na pwedeng maranasan ng isang halaman na survive niya yon with their natural habitat. So that is why, sabi ko nga, in every tree planting, ang sinasabi ko, you cannot go wrong with beach species.
Exciting. Exciting to see that property being populated with beach forestry species. Thank you, Sir Pat.
I would like to add, no, because this CBI is not only dealing with the arboretum. Of course, it's good. We should have an arboretum. But take note that the buildings and even the concreted areas probably should have a landscape. And therefore, in any landscaping practices, we are recommending native species. Okay.
Yes, perfect. Thank you po for that. And in relation to the laws, kasi kanina po si Dr. Alan had a presentation on laws and policies, and may madaming mga preceded questions kasi we are joined by different individuals from the government agencies as well and DNR, and they're asking what could the LGUs daw do to jumpstart urban greening. Ano daw po ba yung mga ibang urban policies and relevant laws? So Dr. Alan, if I could call you to share your presentation also.
I'm not a doctor, Nela, but
sorry. Attorney Alan po pala, na-mix na sa mga doctor na kasama po natin. Attorney Alan Bersena.
Just to cite, we have actually a few laws requiring the establishment of tree parks. No? Just to cite an example, I think this was part of my presentation, but for some reason it skipped. No? It was skipped. But in 1983, there was a letter of instruction by then President Marcos. No? Siguro, hindi nyo na inabutan to, no? But there's actually a letter of instruction, LOI 1312, no? Requiring local government units to establish at least one forest park or tree park in their area. No? And there are other laws like PD 953 requiring subdivisions to set aside spaces for tree parks. No? But the most relevant one is this DNR-DILG Joint Memorandum Circular number 9801, no? Requiring municipalities and cities to again establish tree parks, green belts, and other forest development projects inside their jurisdiction. So There are actually laws, no, that mandate the establishment of tree parks, but sometimes these are not being followed or being implemented. No? So, if we want our LGUs to put up tree parks in our cities and municipalities, we can cite these specific laws.
Yes. Thank you po. But why do you think po these laws aren't being implemented? Is it the political will, lack of knowledge on these laws? Ano po ba kaya? And how can we start? Kasi yun po yung isang question from government. How do we start? How do we, transition the LGUs into that?
Yeah.
May nagtanong po sa Q&A.
Yeah, it's a combination, Nela, no? Partly because of lack of knowledge and awareness. No, they don't know that there exists laws like this. No, and maybe some LGUs wouldn't know how to do it. But I understand they have their ENRO, their Environment and Natural Resources Officer, who can actually lead in the development of these tree parks. No, so lack of awareness, technical expertise. No. And this is why it's important to have webinars like this and even educational programs, no, so that we can promote awareness. No, it's not just also planting trees; it's also winning hearts and minds, no, and increasing awareness so that more people would be aware and appreciate why particularly planting native trees and having tree parks are very important.
Agree. Thank you po. Actually, baka pero ang goal nga po is magkaroon ng parang urban park society rin. As you said, diba, to mainstream, to be that group who will really populate it. And EDC has been also doing a great job on that. Salamat po.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So we also have another question from NPF that they hope to be answered from each of you guys today. So how should we...
Nela, hold on. Our NPF Board of Trustees is also in the Zoom room. He is Architect Cesar Aljama, and then he just sent me a message that he would want to say something.
Sige po.
Architect Cesar, good morning. Architect Cesar?
Yeah, I'm trying to set up.
Hello, good morning po.
Can you see me?
Thank you for joining this Umpukan.
Yeah.
Everyone, this is Architect Cesar Aljama, Nayong Pilipino Foundation Board of Trustees.
Yeah, in behalf of Nayong Pilipino Foundation, I would like to express my gratitude to all the people, to the presenters here and to the audience. It has been a wonderful morning, and the talks were definitely enlightening and will be very helpful to us in master planning the Nayong Pilipino Park. In as much as we would like to have the whole park as an urban garden, I was already dreaming of Dr. Jurgen's beach forest, as I saw in her presentation about the different kinds of trees and vegetation that will thrive in that area. But let us remember that this will definitely not be a park, a whole forest. There will come a time that actually before the pandemic, we already were doing a master plan for the park. And in the park, there are components of a pavilion, museum, offices, exhibition halls, and such. So let us remember that there will be areas that will be developed into structures. So, but as much as possible, we would like to plant trees all around the area. And I think the problem at the moment is how to prepare the land to be able for us to be able to plant trees and other vegetation, because as has been discussed, the site is now rocky, gravelly, and the terrain is not there's some, it's a rolling terrain. There are deep portions, there are flooded areas when it rains. So the thing that we have to develop first is, you know, the site development. Because I'm afraid that if we plant just everywhere, what happens as Dr. Primavera's concern, that there might come a time that these trees will be cut down. So sayang lang naman yung ating mga ginawa. So I think we should be very careful where to locate, where to plant these trees, so that in the future they will be protected and they will grow, you know, they will grow unhampered without fear of them being uprooted or cut. So yun lang, I just want to, that before we plant, let's take a look at the area and decide the spots, the right spots where all these trees will be planted. Para hindi naman sayang yung ating effort. So yun lang, that's my only concern. And I commend everyone for this webinar. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat po, Architect Cesar. Actually, I agree with you in the sense na, I mean, I visited several urban parks in different parts of the globe. And you really see that there's a balance. You could have naman po, like, let's say, a museum for heritage, right? But it's designed with natural materials, hindi yung puro semento lang. Integrating local architecture, local resources, and also creating that balance between nature in those spaces. So I'm sure kayo po ang mas may ano in terms of like the master planning. That's why Sina Laya are doing master planning and your team. So if anyone also wants to add to what Architect Cesar has shared from the speakers, meron po bang gustong mag-share ng insights?
Nelia, can I add quickly lang?
Of course po.
Oo, yung sa ano, yung sa rolling terrain at saka yung medyo wet, waterlogged, yun na pinoint out ko, yung bangkal, no? Bangkal, kaya niyang tubig bangkal and putat. Those are beach forest species. And then, I think ang importante talaga yung layout. Naka-layout na siya na ito, dito ang building, ito, dito ang open space, para you don't dig out the trees once they are there for 5 years, no? And then very quickly, dun sa LGU, I think there was a discussion sa LGU awareness, meron na tayong success story in Nabunturan, Davao de Oro, no? Where the native tree group, the founder is also a municipal councilor na converge ang LGU at saka ang NGO, and very native tree bias. So now they have all kinds of initiatives planting native trees, whether mga civil society or mga government agencies, pati yung cemetery, doon sa public cemetery, ang dami nilang pictures kung sino-sino na, kasi it's open space doon sa public cemetery, no? So yan, puno na yan ng native trees. So yun ang the convergence, dahil nandun yung awareness. Sana ganun ma-replicate natin yun, no? Both non-government at saka government na converge and unified yun lang.
Agree. The very, very important point that you brought up po, for state and non-state actors to really come together for the success and the results of this. Sige po. So, before we, meron pa pong last, if we could add, kasi yung question nga po ng NPF na how could the interim park be started? I guess based from Dr. George, and also explore given limited resources, I guess yung talagang start is yung layouting po na sinasabi niyo po in the studies, kasi to ensure na mapaprotect na, tama po ba? I mean, who wants to start po dun sa, maybe Dr. Jurgen, since you said something about that?
Come again?
Sorry po. How could we start?
First of all, you have to set, kasi
interim park, hindi ibig sabihin na interim park na sisirain, pwede na siya. Parang
hindi. Oo. I have the same problem with my 3-hectare area, no? Kasi I'm planting trees na. Sabi ko, I will not live forever. So I need siguro I need a Republic Act, no, so that yung aking mga apo at yung mga in-laws hindi nila puputulin ganon. Oo. So you have to set muna saan ba ano ba ang you have to set na ano ng dito yung mga buildings, the basic buildings, and I think it would be good to have a ratio of open space to cement, to concrete, ganon, no? So you have a ballpark figure, ganon, you play around, and then you set na kung saan ilagay, so that the open spaces you feel free to that what you will plant there, hindi nyo na i-put up. The first step really is to lay out na kung saan, para wala nang cutting or uprooting yon.
Agree po. Salamat. Okay, how about si Dr. Anadel? Do you want to add to that po?
Yeah, thank you. At saka sundin yung layout ng ng land. Kung merong depression, hindi ka na mag-dig out. At anong characteristic nung soil, kung sandy soil or sandy rocky, the right species has to be planted there. Hindi yung tatambak na naman ng bagong lupa para itanim yung desired species. So the rule is basically, yeah, if we can use the natural terrain, the natural, or what is now the geographic characteristic of the land, and we plant the right species. We plan around it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Anadel. How about Prof. Pat?
Yes, Nela, I agree with Ma'am Georgine. It should be the layout first, huh? The design layout. And while this is very practical to, of course, use the existing or the beach species, as this is a beach area, we should also not be restricted or limited current characteristic of the soil is, because if we want to provide people with, for instance, ethnobotanical trees, other trees with different purposes, then we can always have soil amelioration. So therefore, of course, as much as possible, we don't want to alter the natural habitat, but that's already altered in the first place. But if we want to have, what I am seeing is that we maybe somehow we want to have a thematic park. For instance, this area is for medicinal trees. This area is for historical trees. This area is for threatened trees. So we cannot be limited to the current characteristic of the trees, because we can always do soil improvement, soil amelioration. And that is why the partnership with DNR is very, very important as well.
Okay, thank you very much po, Prof. Pat. And lastly, na may mix up, Attorney Alan. Attorney Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Nela. Just to add to Dr. Georgian's comment kanina about setting aside a portion of the property to be devoted to tree parks or open spaces. In PD 953, there's a ratio. It requires 30% of the total land area to be used for open space, natural parks, tree parks. So maybe Nayong Pilipino can look into this and try to come up with a percentage, wherein they can use the area for setting up tree parks or arboretum projects. So it's 30%, but it could vary. But that's just an example that we need to set aside a portion of the property.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
In relation to what Attorney said regarding the ratio, actually it is also included in the CBI, in the City Biodiversity Index. It would be good if this park, Nayong Pilipino Park, will be the pilot area for the CBI. Because wala pa. 2018 pa or 2018 pa yung technical bulletin, pero wala pang nagpa-follow, wala pa nag-a-adapt.
Okay, thank you po. Laya, do you want to add to that or
Wala
Kay?
naman. Baka Attorney Kay.
I'd just like to clarify, actually the land of Nayon in that area is 15 hectares. So about 5.4 is being leased to Resorts World. I think that's like a 25-year lease, and that's supposed to provide Nayong Pilipino with income. The money that was advanced from that lease was supposed to be used to build a park. That was about 1 billion. Nayong Pilipino does not get money from GAA. So we're stuck with that money for our operations. And this is really where we are. Apart from a biodiversity and design issue, this is also about a sustainability issue. So we're also welcome to find partners in future discussions about how do we really fund urban parks, since we discussed about, let's say, it's the duty of LGUs or the duty of developers. What happens if they don't do their duty? So here is Nayong Pilipino, a GOCC with land. It might not have all the money. The instructions before was to use only 30% for development. 70% was going to be green and open space for the 9.5 hectares. So we really want most of that to be green. But I think it's that because our experience can also help us with other LGUs and government agencies who might have money to build a park but not money to maintain it. And maybe that can be a project that we can work on together for next year. How do we maintain parks? How do we ensure constant public support and public demand for parks so that in all budgets in the national and local agencies, there's always money for that. And also at the same time, how do we maintain parks? Because I also don't know. I've been looking for a park maintenance manual. I haven't found any yet. In my own province in Cebu, every time a tree branch falls and hits someone, the solution is always to cut the tree. Maybe there's like a better way to do things so that we're able to keep our park. So I hope that today is just the beginning of partnerships with our resource persons. Our mandate's not just building parks, it's also research and training, and we have a leadership institute, and we feel that all Filipino leaders should be people with hearts for nature and who know what to do. Like, it's not enough to just love the environment, you should know what to do also, and we hope we can work together for that program.
Okay, thank you, Kay, for that. And we're looking forward, talaga, like what you said, to seeing what comes from this discussion beyond this. Because I'm sure we want to maintain this partnerships and these collaborations with the resource speakers to make sure we are really doing a science-based and collaborative approach towards this. Tama, no? Okay? Okay, sige. So, do any of the speakers want to have any last words to call to action
Last word,
participants from all over the Philippines, from government, academe? Wag na. Oh.
Nelia,
Yes po, Dr.
can I just add yung sabi ni Pat, tama yun. Kasi itong level na ito, actually dapat beach and lowland forest, no? Yun yung ano natin, Pat. We will have hundreds of species to choose from dyan. So okay lang yan, oo. Kaya lang, yun lang ang alam ko yung beach, kaya ayoko mag-ano ng lowland, baka mamaya mabuking ako, no? But actually kasamang lowland. Yeah.
Okay, thank you po. So that was a very insightful discussion. Thank you to the participants for being very engaging. Ang daming mga comments on the chat box. So again, thank you to our speakers for gracing us with your presence and for the insights. We're sure we want to collaborate moving forward on this and to bring you in on the discussions always. So Laya, maybe you want to say some last words before we end? And thank you to all the participants who joined.
Okay, thank you, Nella. First of all, a virtual applause to all our esteemed panelists. It was such a pleasure listening to all your wonderful insights. I am not a scientist, but I find it really necessary to listen to scientists so that the design of urban parks will integrate aesthetics, science, human well-being. We don't want to make expensive mistakes because it is unfair to the Filipino public. So we really want to do this right. And that's the reason why we have been conducting solutions building activities like Umpukan sa Nayon, aside from interviews with experts. Experts will identify the more appropriate starting points. No, hopefully we get that partnership with the NRERDB to do soil analysis so that we can plant the right types of plants and trees in clusters, taking the whole layout into consideration. Everyone, this is the last Umpukan for 2020, but we don't want it to stop here. We really want to sustain the conversations, and we are hoping for intensified public support after this. We want to generate knowledge products because, as Attorney Kay Malilong said, it is not just, Nayong Pilipino is not limited to establishing parks, no, but also research and trainings, no, and social amelioration and job generation. So we want to make policy recommendations also that will benefit not just Nayong Pilipino, but the entire country. And we want to sustain partnerships with organizations represented by panelists we have been inviting for the past Umpukan iterations for 2020. We want specialists, organization, and the public to help us reconnect people with nature, generate green jobs by reconnecting business with nature, and hopefully in partnership with government and civil society, mainstream information on proper park guidelines. So we want a generation of Filipinos with a love for culture and nature, and we want this to be our collective legacy to all. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Nella. Thank you to our board of trustees who are here, and Attorney Kay Malilong, and thank you most especially to our panelists who joined us this morning.
Maraming salamat. Enjoy your lunch, and we hope that you could all join Generation Restoration Philippines. Salamat to everyone for your time.
Bye-bye.